Coming up on We Talk News this week, 420 is history, but not before some firsts, like an advertisement in Times Square for the best seeds in the world. And the unofficial cannabis holiday did set records for sales, but crashes the Dutchie sales tracking platform. It's official. Delaware becomes the 22nd adult use legal state, and Minnesota is just one House vote away from becoming the 23rd. Plus, is there bipartisan life support for safe banking? Also in Congress, cannabis research for veterans gets turned down along party lines. And a record-holding U.S. long jumper gets suspended and her jumping records expunged for testing positive for weed. All that and more coming up on We Talk News with Alaina Pinto next.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
After a week off to observe the high holiday of April 20th, this is Weed Talk News, and I'm Alaina Pinto. Usually, more cannabis is sold on April 20th than any other single day of the year, and that was true again, according to data collector called Headset. This year, many retailers extended their 420 deals through the week, but check out this cool map created by Headset. This shows the intensity of sales during the day of April 20th, and like a weather map, the darker the colors, the more weed was sold, with the East Coast leading the way until the end of the day in the West. Makes sense. Headset data reported that sales were roughly twice what a typical Thursday brings in around the country, and another sales tracker platform called Cova said total sales in the U.S. for that day were up by 40%. Obviously, there are more legal states, and that drives more sales, and that trend is continuing. In fact, Fortune magazine predicts that 2023 will be the biggest year for the industry, with sales in excess of $33 billion with a B dollars. One of those new states, Delaware. The governor of that state, John Carney, might not like it or even signed it, but his state legislature said yes to adult use. Therefore, Delaware becomes the 22nd state in the union to go legal. Now, by the time we release this news show, Minnesota might become the 23rd adult use legal state, as that state's House of Representatives passed a legalization bill by a 71-59 vote, and their Senate is supposed to do the same. Unlike Delaware, their governor, Tim Walz, is ready to sign it into law. So once again, states are taking the contradicting laws about cannabis into their own hands. There is some movement for reform on the federal level, and Andrew Behringer has more from D.C. and Maryland.
Hello, my name is Andrew Behringer, and you are watching We Talk News. A recent cannabis research bill was blocked by the Senate Republicans at the federal level. The Veteran Affairs Medicinal Cannabis Research Act, which primarily focuses on research only of cannabis-related medicine for our veterans, was rejected on a Wednesday, vote 57-42. Now, a little bit of history on this bill. It actually cleared the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee in February, but somehow did not make it and get 60 votes as needed to be approved by the Senate. Hopefully, this bill, which will help our veterans and just the research, will get another chance in the Senate. Now on to some more positive news. The Cannabis Safe Banking Bill is back in the headlines. Now, I don't know if a lot of you are aware, but the Safe Banking Act is a bill that has been bounced around the last couple of years in the legislative sessions. Not unfortunately, but fortunately enough, this time around, it's not just on one side. The House and the Senate have both submitted bills at the same time on each side, with bipartisan support on each side. The Senate bill has 2 main sponsors and 38 co-sponsors. Wow, that is a heck of a lot of co-sponsors. And the House has 2 sponsors and 8 co-sponsors. Now that should give us a very, very strong gut feeling that this time around, cannabis industry members will have access to safe banking. The latest versions include safe harbor laws extended to community development financial institutions and minority depository institutions, as well as anyone who works in the cannabis industry will get access to federally backed mortgages and not have to worry about that. Now, those are little caveats in the recent bill, and hopefully these bills, with the bipartisan support that they are receiving on both the House and the Senate side, will make some kind of progress and eventually help the cannabis industry. Well, that's all I have for you this week. Thank you for tuning in to We Talk News. Once again, I am Andrew Behringer, and have a great day.
While there is now more money in the cannabis industry than any other time in our history, greed and pay-for-play scandals continue to rock cannabis. That is certainly true in the state of Michigan. We get more on this story from that state's executive director of NORML, Rick Thompson.
Hello, everyone. This is the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News. Let's begin. Rick Johnson pled guilty to bribery and corruption charges in a Grand Rapids federal court on Tuesday. The former Speaker of the Michigan House and former chairman of the Marijuana Review Board admitted his guilt in a scheme whereby wealthy industry players paid himself and his wife thousands of dollars to gain early advantage in the licensing process during the start of the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act, which was the 2016 law enabling businesses to serve the state's patient and caregiver populations. Last week, financier John Delaware also pled guilty to the scheme involving free travel and kickbacks to Johnson and his wife. Next week, 2 lobbyists will have their chance to enter guilty pleas for their part in arranging payments from cannabis companies to the former speaker. Johnson will be sentenced at a hearing scheduled for several months from now. Johnson, who is 70 years old, is expected to get no jail time for his crimes. Part of the plea deal arranged between Johnson's attorneys and the federal prosecutors is that his wife will not be charged and that Johnson will ask for a sentencing reduction at the upcoming hearing, which the feds will not object to. The criminal investigation is still ongoing, and insiders believe more people will be charged with crimes related to influence peddling within the state legislature regarding the growing cannabis industry. Johnson is cooperating with investigators. 2 cannabis companies which gave money to influence lawmakers have yet to be named, and one of them is suspected to be Green Peak or Skymint. The giant in-state cannabis company is in serious financial trouble and has been placed in receivership as creditors try to squeeze every penny from the failing cannabis company. Last week, Skymint parted ways with their long-term leader and face of the company, Jeff Radway. Some are speculating that the departure heralds more legal trouble for Radway and Skymint. At the time of Johnson's crimes, Green Peak was throwing money at lawmakers and local officials as they tried to establish laws and partnerships in order to create a monopolistic stranglehold on the emergent industry. There will be more news to come. On Tuesday of this week, the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association held their spring event at the Kellogg Center in East Lansing. Hundreds of cannabis industry and community participants attended. Notable speeches were made, including one from Representative Kevin Coleman, who revealed he's running for mayor of Westland. Coleman is in his 3rd and final term in the State House and has been a valuable co-sponsor for some pro-cannabis legislation introduced in the last few sessions. Senator Jeff Irwin came directly from a Senate committee meeting and encouraged attendees to remember where they came from and to envision the future of the cannabis industry. Longtime cannabis lobbyist Kevin McKinney related a few stories about the state's lobbying industry, emphasizing that some people have become far too casual in the way they ignore regulations, and some of those people may be soliciting donations or favors from current cannabis industry companies. ACT Labs founder Bob Miller introduced the Truth in Testing program, a concept whereby cannabis testing labs would agree to adhere to common standards and methods in exchange for being recognized by the industry as a lab which is doing it right. Now, that recognition will come as a logo or an image placed on cannabis packaging to indicate the test results of that product are more trustworthy. Hostess and MC Robin Snyder of the Cannabis Industry Association did a fantastic job of making the event work well. Kudos to her team. And here's looking forward to the MICIA Summer Annual. Well, our final story for today is another one of greed. Everyone knows April 20 is the cannabis industry's national holiday, and sales for cannabis products go through the roof on that day. Every cannabis retailer wants to be open, but what if you haven't received your official license to operate from the city yet? You probably just stay closed, right? Well, not if you're Jars Cannabis Company in Monroe. Now realize that Jars doesn't even have their name on the building yet, according to WTVG, nor do they have a license to operate retail, but the doors were popped open on 4/20. Now this came as a surprise to their neighbors in the strip mall that they're in, and to city officials as well. Jars is now accused of 3 different violations, including operating a special event without a permit, installing improper and unapproved signage, and violating the noise ordinance. The headline on the Channel 13 Action News piece is, Michigan marijuana shop may lose license after 4/20 event. And that may very well be true. Council is meeting in Monroe on Tuesday of next week to determine the punishment facing Jars for trying to game the system for some 4/20 profit. And that's it for the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News.
As legal states come on board legally for adult use sales, we are starting to see more and more out-of-state companies expanding into the new states. Hypnotize New Jersey is a prime example, as they are trying to expand to Mount Laurel. And Jill Goldsberry has our Garden State Cannabis Report.
Hey guys, it's Jill from Weed Talk News, New Jersey, and here's what's happening in New Jersey cannabis. A Michigan firm, Hypnotize New Jersey, LLC, wants to open up a weed shop in a vacant office building on Church Street in Fellowship Road, according to an application before Mount Laurel, New Jersey's planning board. It seems there may have been an issue because it's less than a mile away from a cluster of 3 proposed dispensaries near Church Road's intersection. The planning board is considering the application at its May 4th meeting, and we will find out what happens from there. In other news, in Jersey City, City Council vote narrowly confirmed applicant Chelsea Duffy's application for her planned marijuana dispensary. The vote was 6 in favor, 1 against, and 2 abstentions. The confirmation vote came after months of setbacks, including a rejection last fall, which Duffy decided to sue the city and won the order to get her retail dispensary application reinstated so that it could be considered by Ward East Councilman James Solomon. While there are now about 24 cannabis-related businesses with city approval, none of them have opened yet for business. So that's another story right there. But the confirmation vote came after months of setbacks, like I said, where Duffy sued the city, won the right to get her retail dispensary application reinstated so that it could be considered by council. And we will just wait currently for the date of her opening, and we will keep you posted. I'm Jill Goldsberry for Weed Talk News, New Jersey. Thanks for watching.
Over in Europe, Germany continues to get most of the attention and expansion action. There's another country, though, that is moving toward legalization, and it's Finland. And sure enough, on 4/20, the Finns made a move in the legal direction. Our European correspondent is Lex Pelger.
I'm Lex Pelger from White Whale Creation with this week's European Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. In Finland, on 4/20 itself, a citizens' initiative passed the 50,000 signatures needed to force the parliament to consider legislation of the use, possession, personal cultivation, manufacture, and sale of cannabis in Finland, subject to age restrictions. This has happened previously in 2019, and after a few years of wrangling, the parliament's Legal Affairs Committee finally voted to reject it. But as the activist and researcher Alexi Hupli said, now they have to deal with it again. The wind is blowing in their favor. A recent survey of the Finnish population found that 53% favor cannabis decriminalization and a majority also favor medicinal cannabis. In other Finnish news, the country has moved to halt the sale of HHC, hexahydrocannabinol, an intoxicating cannabinoid that can be produced from hemp. Often found in head shops, HHC was being marketed as a replacement for THC, but no longer. Their neighbor Sweden is reportedly about to follow suit. Then, in Germany, amidst all the chatter about their adult use cannabis program, a doctor in Munich will be going to prison for 3 years after overprescribing cannabis to 539 alleged patients. Apparently, he became known as a cannabis doctor and wasn't even examining the patients anymore. He would simply charge them 120 euros for their prescription and made almost 50,000 euros off the scheme. That's the European Cannabis Report for this week. For more on the science side, see my newsletter on Substack, Cannabinoids and the People. I'm Lex Pelger from White Whale Creations reporting for Weed Talk News.
And now let's check in with Brandon Jones. He has our Missouri report this week, and he is at the NFL Draft.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones from Big Green Distribution with Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. And yes, I am live at the NFL Draft in Kansas City. No, you can't smoke on this side of the fence, but if you're just on the other side, right outside the gate, you can definitely consume your cannabis. There might be people consuming inside. I don't know. But as you can tell, Kansas City is popping right now with tons of events. Everything's going on here. It's a great time to be in the city. Had Wiz Khalifa obviously here for 420. Have this awesome event down here for the draft. All of downtown is having after parties. Everything is going on here in Kansas City. Can't wait for you guys to get out. Come check out the draft. Again, I'm Brandon Jones from Big Green Distribution. Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News.
Brandon Jones' Missouri Cannabis Report is brought to you by Baker Brands, a curated B2B marketplace for head shops and dispensaries.
It's becoming more and more the norm that workers in the cannabis industry are unionizing. It's true here in Massachusetts and now Arizona. And that's where Karen Black is with our new Arizona report.
Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Black with Green Finger Consulting. Welcome to the Arizona Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. On 420, while many Arizonans were shopping for deep discounts and new products, some dispensary workers, along with a few state and local officials, attended an event in Central Phoenix hosted by the United Food and Commercial Workers Union Local 99. Proponents of unionizing claim corporate profits have become more important than patients' and customers' needs and workers' well-being, particularly since adult use sales began in January 2021. The union-sponsored Arizona Cannabis Workers Rising Project recently launched a petition demanding better pay, more fair or no tip pooling, healthcare and other benefits, harassment-free policies, and stricter security measures. As of press time, the petition had 97 signatures, falling short of their goal of 100. UFCW 99 currently represents at least 5 cannabis-related businesses here in the Copper State. Arizona, which recorded $1.4 billion in marijuana sales in 2022, is a right-to-work state. C4 Laboratories, a leading cannabis testing facility based here in Scottsdale, was acquired by California's SC Labs on April 24th. All C4 employees will join SC Labs, which has cannabis and/or hemp testing labs in its home state, along with Michigan, Oregon, and Colorado. The Science of Psychedelics and Spiritual Medicine Conference is scheduled to be held April 28th through 30th in downtown Phoenix. The agenda is jam-packed with speakers from many different backgrounds covering a variety of topics. There are still a few in-person tickets available, and the conference will be streamed live to virtual ticket holders. Organizers are also offering an option to purchase the recording after the event. For more information, visit thescienceofpsychedelics.com. That's it for this week's Arizona Cannabis Report. I'm Karen Black from Green Finger Consulting, reporting for Weed Talk News.
A few weeks ago, Weed Week reported on a story involving the Cookies CEO Berner, aka Gilbert Millam. Now the rapper and entrepreneur is finally responding. In an Instagram video post this week, Berner said the allegations of pervasive self-dealing with millions of dollars in personal benefits and kickbacks is BS. Berner also said he was looking forward to his day in court to prove his innocence. But back here in New England, the state of Vermont has lost one of its most well-known cannabis advocates, Dr. Bob Melamed. And Jessie Lynn Dolan has more from the Green Mountain State.
I'm Jessie Lynn Dolan from Vermont Cannabis Nurses, and this is the Weed Talk News Vermont Report. Cannabis activist and genetic researcher Dr. Bob Melamed died on April 19th at 4:20 p.m., 75 years young, after complications from a stroke he suffered last year. Melamed was considered an expert on the endocannabinoid system and taught at both the University of Vermont and Colorado Springs. He was a well-known international speaker and advocate to the curative and anti-aging properties of cannabis. Dr. Bob will be forever honored and remembered, not just in the small state of Vermont, but throughout the world, where he touched countless lives and supported patients endlessly. Thank you, Dr. Bob, for your work. We all hope Dr. Bob celebrated his first 420 in a much better place. In other Vermont highlights, at this month's Cannabis Control Board meeting, the board voted to close Tier 5 indoor cultivation license applications, as well as approving 29 new licenses. That's the Vermont Report for Weed Talk News. I'm Vermont's cannabis nurse, Jessie Lynn Dolan.
The Vermont Cannabis Report is supported by another Green Mountain business, Cannatrol, winner of High Times Best Dry Cure System. Check them out at cannatrolls.com.
Now we all know that Canada was the first G7 nation to legalize cannabis federally. But since then, the entire industry has been mismanaged due to a number of factors. The original law is supposed to allow citizens to grow up to 4 plants of their own, but now the Quebec Supreme Court is saying not so fast. Debbie Facey has our Canadian report.
Hi, this is Debbie Facey with Weed Talk News, coming at you with the KD80 Talk of the week. I hope you all had an amazing 420. I have to say that I did. There were enough events going on in Canada, but at the same time, they were all scattered, especially here in Toronto, Ontario, I should say, sorry. But at the same time, I do hope you all had a great 420 and you're having a great week. So in Canada, as of right now, for this week, we have 2 stories. So the Okanagan UK researchers have found that there is a new pathogen that is being, not created, that is being found within the roots of most of the cannabis plants that are being grown in some of these facilities. That pathogen is called black rot. So it's basically making the plant a proactive, I want to say, host of being able to have these pathogens attached to its roots and make it ineffective to be able to be smoked, and also infected to be able to actually just have around any other plants, because the fact that it would transfer. The one thing that they did realize is that most of these facilities and LPs, I should say, aren't aware of this new or this upcoming black rot pathogen that they have found, due to the fact that most of them aren't necessarily looking at the roots once the plant has been grown. This is something that Okanagan is hoping that most researchers, or I should say LPs, are starting to look at and putting into effect, due to the fact that it is harmful for both the other plants that are growing in the room and for any other of the cannabis consumers that are going to be smoking it. Next, what we have is the OCS, so the Ontario Cannabis Society, is implementing a new, I want to say, plan where they are creating a not-for-profit and impact in order to create a more diverse, as well as a sustainable and a more knowledgeable team, budtenders, LPs, facilities, just cannabis throughout all Ontario, Canada. This is something that they are trying to get all across the board in sync, especially due to the fact that there are some new laws that are going to be implemented, some new laws that will be taken away, as well as brands, labels, and LPs unfortunately closing or restructuring. So with the OCS having this new non-for-profit in place, they are hoping that it is going to not only expand the cannabis industry in the way where they're only going to gain more by the knowledge and the expansion of the diversity and sustainability, but they're also hoping for the OCS to be able to actually have a ground when it comes to the cannabis industry. So, once again, this is Debbie Facey coming at you with the Canadian Talk of the Week. I hope you have a great one.
In Massachusetts, there's been another layoff at another dispensary. Plus, can you name 2 of the top 15 cannabis-friendly cities in the USA? If you guessed Boston and Hartford, Connecticut, you are right. PCM founder Jimmy Young has our Bay State Cannabis Report.
Thanks, Alaina. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, reporting for Weed Talk News. And this is the Massachusetts Cannabis Report, sponsored by Holyoke Cannabis, the #1 dispensary in Holyoke. Now, that Western Mass community has a new player in town, or rather, delivering it out of town. The Blaze Express opened for business and delivery this week out in Holyoke. Now, also out in Western Mass is INSA, a dispensary with locations in East Hampton and Springfield. Well, INSA has laid off a number of employees. CEO Peter Gallagher made that announcement this week, citing out-of-state competition as the reason for the layoff. Meanwhile, back in the 617 area code, Ascend in Boston is facing some disgruntled employees. Many of them were outside that location in North Station protesting unfair labor practices and tactics like the claim of keeping their tips. This is one of the reasons why unions are finding their way into cannabis dispensaries in the Bay State. And finally, if you had to name 2 of the top 15 cities for cannabis in the U.S., do you think 2 New England cities might make the list of the top 15? I didn't, but they did. According to Real Estate Witch, an online publication of Clever Real Estate, or Cleaver Real Estate, Portland, Oregon is the most weed-friendly cannabis city in America. The 2 from New England, Boston at 13 and Hartford, Connecticut at 15. So what were the researchers looking for? Metrics like pricing, the number of doctors prescribing cannabis for 100,000 people, or the number of total dispensaries in the state and or the city. And get this, how many Taco Bells are there for 100,000 residents? I'm not kidding. Taco Bell. I don't make that stuff up. That's this week's Bay State Cannabis Report, brought to you by Holyoke Cannabis. I'm Jimmy Young reporting for Weed Talk News.
Bay State Cannabis Report is supported by Holyoke Cannabis, Holyoke's finest cannabis recreational experience.
Hello, everyone. I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's Cannabis Stock Report for Weed Talk News. Safe Banking Act, that's been reintroduced into Congress, and that stands for the Secure and Fair Enforcement Banking Act. And that prohibits a federal banking regulator from penalizing an institution for providing banking services for a cannabis-related business. So this made all the cannabis stocks curl up and start to move in the right direction. Now we're going to look at Canopy Growth's stock chart because it was in the basement and it was trading around 131, but it's looking really good. It wants to pop out of the basement. It wants to go on a run. I'm keeping my eye on it. You should too. And all the cannabis stocks are starting to look really good for a quick run at least. So check them out. And that's this week's Cannabis Stock Report, reporting for Weed Talk News. I'm Doug Miller.
And finally, a U.S. long jumper has been suspended for 1 month for testing positive for cannabis. Tara Davis Woodhall recently won the USA Long Jump Championship in New Mexico with a jump of 6.99 meters or 22.9 feet. When her test came up positive, the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency rescinded her championship and gave her a 1-month suspension. You might remember that sprinter Shaquiri Richardson also tested positive for cannabis right before the Olympics and had to give up her spot. Now, with the NBA stopping their testing for weed and many other major professional leagues are delisting cannabis as a controlled substance, you would think our nation's track and field athletes should be treated the same way. But nothing is easy in the cannabis industry. And that's this week's Weed Talk News. I'm Alaina Pinto, and remember, it is a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly.
It's a whole new world of weed out there, isn't it? Everyone is learning new ways to titrate, ingest, consume, imbibe, and engage with this plant medicine we call cannabis. Hi, I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media and the host of In the Weeds, and once in a while, the really live business cannabis talk show we call Green Rush on Friday afternoons from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern. I've been a medical patient in Massachusetts for almost 10 years now. I remember my first trip to a dispensary just outside of Boston, and I told the bud tender I didn't want to smoke it anymore. So I tried edibles, then tinctures, then vaping, and now if I'm going to smoke, I only use the Widgets filtration system. What? The Widgets.com, Widgets, that's weed, W-E-E-D, G-E-T-S.com, is where you'll find the planet's coolest product.
Both cool the smoke from 1300 degrees to just 90 into your lungs. Plus, the maze pipe and pre-roll filters get rid of all the gunk that you just don't want in your lungs if you can help it.
Add in the code of PCMTV and you get 15% off. So just go to Widgets.com and check out the best way to enjoy a cooler smoke with less coughing and hacking and more peace of mind. All that resin and tar is collected in the polyurethane filters that are easy to clean with soap, water, and a few Q-tips. Your lungs will thank you, and so will I.
We are a cultivation through to consumption lifestyle brand for the cannabis industry. Of course, the crown jewel in our product line is the Armoire home grow system. So now with Green Goddess Supply, we can take you everywhere from growing it in the Armoire right through to storing it, consuming it, rolling it, storing it, you name it, A to Z. Our goal is to enable everybody and anybody anywhere to be able to produce their own organic flower quickly, easily, discreetly, and inexpensively.
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it can make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems, whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that it will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.